So let me now move to the energy and emissions trends. This is not in the state of sustainability, the state of facilities, but because you're on the webinar, you get a chance to see some highlights that's coming on a joint report that Sightlines is going to publish soon with the University of New Hampshire Institute of Sustainability, called the State of Sustainability in Higher Education. And so what we've looked at are Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, so not recycling and some of the other transportation related, but generate gross emissions, either stationary emissions that are generated by you, or emissions as a result of electricity that you've bought off the grid. Emissions are actually down in a modest way, about 5%. When we look at total, energy consumption is actually up about 3%. That's not surprising since space has gone up about 8%. So, you know, when you add more buildings, you're going to generate more consumption, and that is what we've seen happen, particularly the last couple of years. When we normalize the Scope 1 and Scope 2, we see that when we look at it on a square foot basis, and the way people look at it is metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions per 1,000 gross square feet. The peak was 2008. That was true nationally, by the way, also when you look at national data for all types of industries. And we've seen about a 13% decline in emissions on a normalized basis since 2007 on the campuses that we calculate this on both stationary Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. Consumption is also down, but less, about 2%. The last couple of years, this was very cold winters in 13 and 14, and that seems to have affected some of the consumption, as well as the growth in space is affecting the consumption. So how could this happen? How could you have a 13% decline in emissions and only a 3% decline in consumption? Aren't they related? And that'd be a good question, and the answer is about fuel mix. The main source of reduction of emissions has not come because consumption efforts for energy conservation have been wildly successful on college campuses. Certainly there are some campuses where there's been significant success. We were able to document in this report a number of campuses that have had between 25 and 50% reduction in emissions over the last 5 years. So we've definitely seen campuses that are very aggressive and successful, but by and large they were offset by other campuses that are increasing consumption. But the big difference is fuel mix. In 2007, natural gas constituted 74% of all of the stationary fuel mix that you were consuming on college campuses. By 2014, that had gone up to 87%. A sea change. People basically reduced coal from 17% to 10%, reduced other fuels, primarily oil, from 9 to 3%. We did not calculate in here the amount of renewables, but they are also on the rise, but they're still relatively modest. The big difference is that people have dramatically moved from coal and oil to natural gas, and it's a cleaner burning fuel. And also, when you look at your grids, the grids have all gotten cleaner as a result of your utility companies moving from coal and oil to natural gas also. Cost matters when it comes to consumption. We studied consumption by the type regions across the country, and we looked at the far west, New England, Mid-East, Plains and Rockies, Southeast, and Great Lakes. And we also looked at degree days on the top of the chart. And it's a complicated chart because you've got degree days on the top, you've got your consumption ratings on BTUs per square foot, and then the lines are the costs. So the highest cost areas are on the left-hand side, far west, New England, and Mid-East, and they consume the least. The cheapest costs are on the right-hand side, the Plains, the Southeast, and the Great Lakes, and they consume a higher amount than the West Coast, New England, and Mid-East. When you take a look at degree days, it's very interesting. If you compare New England, which has 7,114 degree days, average degree days over this period of time we looked at this, and the Great Lakes, 6,951, so pretty comparable. You can see that New England campuses are just under 120,000 BTUs per square foot. Midwest campuses, Great Lakes campuses are almost 170,000 BTUs per gross square foot. So 50,000 more BTUs per gross square foot same degree days. So when cost is a big factor here, when things are cheaper, people consume more. And when things are more costly, people clearly are more aggressive on their conservation. And so those are important factors when we look at this going across. And of course, we'll have a lot more on this when we get to our state of sustainability.